I'm glad you're here. Stay with me till the end, and drop the town you're watching from in the comments. I like knowing I'm not the only old fool who lived through something like this. My daughter looked me dead in the eye and said, "We're too busy for your drama, Dad. Handle it yourself." My own kids. The ones I drove to hockey practice at 5 in the morning for a decade. The ones I put through university on a millwright's pension and a lot of overtime. They couldn't spare 15 minutes to sit with me while I buried my brother. So I did exactly what they told me to do. I handled it myself. I rewrote my entire will without telling a soul. And when the three of them showed up at the cabin 4 months later, already talking about which bedroom they'd renovate first, they found my lawyer sitting at the kitchen table, briefcase open, papers spread out like a hand of cards nobody wanted to see. I will remember the look on my eldest's face until the day I die. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where this actually started, because this was never really a story about a will. It's a story about the year I finally stopped pretending everything was fine. My name doesn't matter much to this story, so I'll just tell it the way I'd tell it to a neighbor over the fence. I'm 68 years old. I've spent my whole life in a small town outside Peterborough, Ontario, the kind of place where the woman at the Tim Hortons drive-thru knows your order before you say a word. I worked 31 years as a millwright at the paper mill before it closed, then finished my career doing maintenance for the school board. My wife and I raised 3 kids in a modest bungalow with a leaky basement we never quite fixed properly. She passed 9 years ago, heart, sudden, no warning, and I've been on my own since. Though the kids don't like to hear me say on my own. They think it sounds like a complaint. I had one brother, younger than me by 3 years, the kind of man who could fix anything with a roll of electrical tape and a swear word. He never married, never had kids of his own, so in a lot of ways his daughter, my niece, became something more than a niece to me over the years. But I'll get to her. It was a Tuesday morning in February when my brother called to tell me the doctors had found something on his lungs. Stage 4, non-small cell. The oncologist had used the word aggressive, the way you'd describe a bad winter storm, like it was just weather, just something to be managed. My brother was 65, 5 years younger than me. We'd shared a bedroom growing up in a 2-bedroom house with our parents and a grandmother who smoked menthols at the kitchen table. We knew each other's secrets better than we knew our own. I sat in my kitchen with the phone in my hand for a long time after he hung up. The same kitchen where I'd made 3,000 school lunches, where my wife and I used to have coffee before the kids woke up. I needed to talk to somebody. I needed my children. I called my eldest first. She's 51 now, a director at an energy company in Calgary, the kind of woman who wears a blazer to answer her own phone. She picked up on the 3rd ring, already moving somewhere, heels clicking on tile. "Dad, hey, I've got 2 minutes before a call. It's about your uncle. He's sick. Cancer, they're saying it's serious." "Oh no, that's okay, that's awful. Listen, can I call you back tonight? I'm walking into a board meeting and I really can't." "He's dying," I said. It came out harder than I meant it to. There was a pause, the kind where you can hear someone deciding how much of themselves they're willing to give you. "I'll call you tonight, I promise. I love you." The line went dead before I could say anything else. I told myself she was busy. Important job, important people counting on her. I called my middle boy next, the one who runs a small excavation business out west. Works with his hands like I did, married with 3 kids of his own out near Red Deer. He'd always been my soft one, the boy who used to bring me rocks from the schoolyard and call them treasure. "Hey, Dad, what's going on?" Just hearing his voice, my throat went tight. "It's your uncle. The cancer's back and it's spread. They're saying months, not years." He let out a long breath. "God, that's rough. I'm really sorry, but can we talk tonight? I've got a crew standing around waiting on me and the excavator's acting up. I just needed to tell somebody. I'm scared. I hear you, Dad. I do. But you gotta understand, business has been brutal this year. The bank's on me about the loan on the equipment. Michelle's picking up extra shifts at the hospital just to keep us afloat. I can't be everywhere at once, and you call about something every couple weeks. Last month it was the furnace. Before that it was the fence the neighbor's tree took out. This isn't a fence. This is your uncle." I know. Call his doctor. Call the Cancer Society. They've got people for this. I love you, but I can't drop everything every time. You gotta handle this one yourself. Handle it yourself." Those words sat in my chest like a swallowed stone. My youngest, my boy in Vancouver, taught high school drama and always answered right away. Sensitive kid, always had been. This time it went straight to voicemail. I tried twice more. Voicemail both times. 3 sons and a daughter. No, 3 kids, 2 boys and a girl. 3 calls, and not one of them had 15 minutes for their old man. I got up and walked into the living room, to the wall where I'd hung the family photos over the years. My daughter's graduation, my middle boy's wedding under a tent in a hailstorm, my youngest's first year teaching, grinning like he'd won something. Years and years of summers at the cabin, all of us squeezed onto the dock, sunburnt and laughing. I thought about the years I'd bailed each of them out without being asked. When my daughter's marriage fell apart, who flew out to Calgary for 3 weeks to watch her kids so she could get through it? Me. When my middle boy lost a contract during the downturn and couldn't make payroll, who quietly wired him $11,000 from my retirement fund and told him not to worry about it? Me. When my youngest had his breakdown in his second year of teaching, who took a leave from my job and flew out to sit with him through the worst of it? Me. Every single time, it was me, and now I was the one being told to handle it myself. I sat down on the couch my wife and I bought the year we got married, reupholstered twice because I couldn't bear to get rid of it, and I cried. Not quiet tears, the kind that shake your whole body. I cried for my brother, for the time we were about to lose. But mostly I cried because I finally understood something I'd been avoiding for years. I had raised 3 children to believe that love was a transaction, that everything I ever gave them came with an invisible price tag, that my worth to them was measured by what I could still do for them, not by who I was. And they had learned that lesson perfectly. Around noon I splashed water on my face and made tea, standing at the counter when my youngest finally texted. "Sorry, missed your calls. Crazy morning here. Everything okay? Everything okay?" Like he couldn't manage an actual phone call. I typed back. "Your uncle has stage 4 lung cancer, 3 dots. Gone. Back again. Oh, Dad, I'm so sorry. Sending love your way. Sending love." Like a birthday card. I put the phone down and didn't answer. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing my middle boy's voice. "You call about something every couple weeks," and I got up around 2 in the morning and went to the little office off the kitchen where I kept my paperwork, an old habit from decades of union meetings and pension statements. I pulled out my phone bill printouts, something I'd kept for years without really knowing why, and went through the last 6 months of calls to my kids. There it was, laid out in black and white. The furnace call in January. The fall on the ice in February where I'd thought I'd cracked a rib. The February call about the tree through the fence. Every time, a version of the same brush-off. From their side, I could see how it looked. An old man who called too much, cried wolf too often. But sitting there at 2 in the morning, I understood something else. I wasn't calling because I couldn't manage. I was calling because I was lonely, because I wanted to hear their voices and feel like I still mattered to somebody. The furnace, the fence, the ice. Those were excuses to reach out, and they'd learned to see me as a burden instead of a father. I put the folder away and pulled out another one, labeled in my own handwriting, Loon Lake Cabin. My wife and I had bought that little place 41 years earlier, 2 hours north, a plain wood-frame cottage on a lake, so clear you could count the stones on the bottom. We'd added a bedroom every time a kid came along, built the dock ourselves, one long weekend, with a case of beer and a lot of arguing. Some of the best years of my life happened on that dock. I'd always planned to leave the cabin to the 3 of them, split even, no fuss. Sitting there in the dark with the old photos, I started to wonder if they even remembered those summers, or if they only remembered the property value. The next morning, I drove to the hospital in Peterborough where my brother had been admitted for testing. He looked smaller than I remembered, but when he saw me, his face lit up the way it always did. "There's my big brother," he said, reaching for my hand. We sat together the way we always had, comfortable in the silence. Finally, he asked if I'd told the kids. I nodded, not trusting my voice. "And they were busy," I said. His face went hard. "All 3 of them?" I told him about the calls. He shook his head slowly. "When are you going to stop making excuses for them, brother? They're grown adults. They should know how to show up for their own father." I looked out the window at the gray February sky. I think I've made some mistakes with them. We all make mistakes with our kids. That doesn't give them the right to treat you like you don't matter. A nurse came in to check his vitals, and when she left he shifted in the bed, wincing. "Can I tell you something?" he asked. "Of course. I'm scared, not really of dying. I'm scared of leaving my girl on her own. My niece, his daughter, was 39, recently divorced, raising an 8-year-old by herself and working 2 jobs to keep the lights on. She's strong, I said. You raised her right. I raised her honest, he said. After the divorce, I told her the truth about her ex, that he'd been unkind, that love isn't supposed to hurt. I didn't try to soften it for her. He looked at me. You spent your whole life softening things for your kids, fixing everything before they had to feel the weight of it. I was trying to be a good father. You were a good father. But you forgot to teach them how to give something back, how to show up when it isn't convenient. I knew he was right, even if I didn't want to hear it. My girl comes by every single day, he went on. Brings my granddaughter after school. They read to me. She's exhausted, broke, working 2 jobs, and she's here every day. Your kids are comfortable and successful and can't find 15 minutes. We sat with that for a while. Then I asked him what I should do. Decide what you want the rest of your life to look like, he said, and then make it happen. You're 68, not 98. You could have 20 years left. You want to spend them begging your own kids for scraps of attention. I can't just stop loving them. I'm not asking you to stop loving them. I'm asking you to stop letting them treat you the way I let my marriage treat me for 15 years. He closed his eyes, suddenly tired. Promise me something. Promise me you won't spend the rest of your life shrinking yourself down so they don't have to feel guilty. I promised. I wasn't sure yet how I'd keep it. Over the following weeks, I spent every day I could at the hospital. My niece was there constantly, juggling shifts and her daughter's school pickup, and somewhere in those long afternoons she and I got closer than we'd ever been. One day, while my brother slept and her girl did homework in the corner, we went down to the cafeteria for coffee. "Where are your kids?" she asked me gently. "I don't mean to pry, but Dad's been in here 3 weeks and I haven't seen any of them once." I felt the shame land in my chest. "They're busy," I said. "Too busy to visit their own uncle. Too busy for their father." I didn't have a better answer than that. She reached across the table and took my hand. "I'm sorry. That wasn't my place." "No, you're right to ask. The truth is, I don't know where I lost them. Physically, I know exactly where they are. Emotionally, I don't know when it happened." "You didn't do anything wrong," she said. "You can't make people be something they're not. Trust me, I spent 8 years trying with my ex." Before we went back upstairs, she told me her father had made her promise to pass something along. "He said to tell you that you need to decide what kind of old man you want to be. The kind who accepts being ignored, or the kind who finally demands some respect." That sounded exactly like him. "He also said you should talk to a lawyer about your will," she added quietly. "He said your kids see you as a bank machine, not a person, and it's time they understood the difference." Something in me went very still and very clear. My brother died on a rainy Sunday morning in late spring. My niece and I were both holding his hands. Her daughter had said her goodbyes the night before, curled up on the hospital bed, whispering to him. His last clear words to us were, "Look after each other. Promise me." I called my children from the parking lot. My daughter answered right away, genuinely sorry, but already moving to logistics. She'd check her calendar, send flowers, be there for the service. My middle boy cried real tears on the phone, said he should have visited, blamed the crew, the bank, the kids' hockey schedule. My youngest took the longest to pick up, and when he finally did, he was already crying, saying he'd known this call was coming and hadn't been able to face it. 3 very different reactions, and underneath every one of them the same absence. The funeral was on a bright Saturday, ironic weather for the occasion. The little church was full. My brother had coached minor hockey for 20 years, and half the town showed up. My daughter arrived 15 minutes late in a black coat that probably cost more than my monthly pension, phone in hand right up until the service started. My middle boy came with his wife and 3 kids, the youngest asking loudly when they could leave. My youngest came alone, thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes. My niece gave the eulogy. She talked about her father's stubbornness, his terrible jokes, the way he'd shown up for her every single day of her life, even when it cost him something. "My dad taught me that love isn't about grand gestures," she said, voice steady despite the tears on her face. "It's about showing up day after day, especially when it's inconvenient." I watched my daughter shift in her seat. At the reception after, my daughter found me near the door. "Nice service," she said. "That eulogy was a bit much, though, don't you think?" "All that stuff about showing up," I looked at her. Really looked. Expensive coat, perfect hair, something hard behind her eyes that hadn't been there when she was small. "I thought it was exactly right," I said. She checked her watch. I should probably get on the road, early flight tomorrow. You just got here. Dad, I came for the funeral. That's what you asked for. I asked you to grieve with me. We're literally at a funeral right now. I didn't have an answer for that. My middle boy caught me a few minutes later, wanting to talk about my living situation. The house was old, needed work. I was alone in it. What if something happened? Maybe it was time to think about downsizing, one of those retirement communities with the meal plans. I'm 68, I said, not 98. He pushed a little further. The house was worth good money. If I sold and moved somewhere smaller, I'd have cash on hand. Could maybe help out. Help out how? I asked, though I already knew. He admitted the business was struggling. The bank was circling. Michelle's health scare last year had drained their savings. I told him this wasn't the time to talk about my money. We were standing at his uncle's funeral. He walked away angry, said he'd only been trying to help. My youngest was the last to find me, crying again, apologizing for everything. For missing the calls, for not visiting, for being the worst son alive. I softened. At least he seemed genuinely sorry. I asked him if he was really okay. For 1 second I thought he might tell me the truth. Then he wiped his eyes, said he was just overwhelmed with work, and I could see plain as day that he was lying. After everyone left, my niece and I stayed behind folding chairs while her daughter slept on a pew, worn out from the day. Your cousins didn't stick around to help, she observed. No, I said. I'm sorry if that's out of line, but they're kind of exhausting. I laughed, surprised at myself. I know, I said. I'm tired of making excuses for them. She sat down across from me. Dad made me promise to tell you one more thing, she said. He said the worst thing you can do for the people you love is let them keep treating you badly. It doesn't help them, and it definitely doesn't help you. He was right, I said. So what are you going to do? What he told me to do, I said. Protect myself. The Monday after the funeral, I called an old friend of my brother's, a lawyer in Peterborough, who'd helped my wife and me draw up our first will decades ago. He'd since taken on his own son as a junior partner, but he still practiced, mostly out of stubbornness. I told him I needed to talk about changing my will. We met that Wednesday. I laid it all out for him, the missed calls, the funeral, the comments about downsizing. When I finished, he was quiet a long moment. What do you want to do? He finally asked. I want to leave the cabin to my niece, I said. Not the kids? They'll each get something. Just not the cabin. She's shown me more care in 3 months than the 3 of them have in 3 years. They could challenge this, he warned. I know. That's why I need it done right. We talked about a cognitive assessment, video testimony, documentation of the pattern, the phone logs, the funeral, all of it. Once we do this, he said, there's no quiet way to undo the damage, even if you change your mind later. The damage is already done, I told him. They just don't know it yet. The neuropsychologist put me through a battery of tests over 2 sessions, memory, reasoning, problem solving. I scored in the 94th percentile for my age group. Anyone who tries to argue cognitive decline, she told me, is going to have a very hard time with this report. The video testimony took me 3 tries. The first 2, I broke down. On the 3rd, I got through it. I'm doing this of my own free will, without pressure from anyone, I said to the camera. It's not because I don't love my children. I will always love them. But love has to go both ways, and for years I've given everything I had and gotten very little back. When my brother was dying, none of them could find 15 minutes for me. My niece has shown me, without being asked, what it looks like to actually love somebody. That's why the cabin is going to her. When we turned off the camera, I felt lighter than I had in months. By late June, my kids had started a group text titled Cabin Ideas, discussing new appliances, replacing the dock, repainting the master bedroom, all for a property none of them owned. I watched the messages pile up without answering. Finally, my daughter texted directly. What's the process for transferring the cabin into our names? Do we need lawyers, or can we just handle it at the land registry office? I typed back. The cabin is not being renovated. It is my property and I have not authorized anything. The group chat went silent for 10 full minutes. Then my daughter called, annoyed, accusing me of overreacting. I asked her why she was suddenly so interested in a cabin she hadn't visited in 3 years. She didn't have a good answer. In July, carrying laundry down to my basement, I missed the second-to-last step and went down hard, landing on my wrist. The pain was immediate and sharp. I dragged myself up with my good hand and called my daughter first. No answer. I called my middle boy. Dad, I'm in the middle of something. Can I call you back? I fell down the stairs. I think I broke my wrist. Okay, can you drive yourself to the hospital? I can barely stand up. Right, okay, call 911. I'll try to get there when I can. He hung up. My youngest didn't answer either. I sat on the concrete floor, cradling my wrist, and absurdly started to laugh, because it was that, or start screaming. I called my niece. She answered on the first ring, and within 20 minutes of hearing my voice, she was in her car, breaking every speed limit between her place and mine, beating the ambulance there by 10 minutes. She rode with me to the hospital, argued with the insurance line on my behalf, filled my prescription, and drove me home. "Where are your kids?" she finally asked, tucking a blanket over me on the couch. "Busy," I said. She didn't say anything, but I heard her step into the hallway later and have a short, sharp phone call with somebody, voice low and furious. My daughter finally called the next morning, once her brother had mentioned it to her almost as an afterthought. "Why didn't you call me?" she demanded. "I did. You didn't answer, Te. You should have left a message." I told her not to bother coming. My niece was already here. There was a pause, and then, almost sulking, she said if I was going to be ungrateful about it, forget it, and hung up. My middle boy showed up that afternoon with flowers, looking genuinely shaken, admitting Sarah, his wife, had called him a terrible son over it. My youngest came the day after, sobbing, saying he was the worst son alive, that he hadn't even checked his phone because he'd been too tangled up in his own problems. When I asked what problems, he shut down completely, said he couldn't talk about it, that if he told me I'd only make it about myself. I let it go, but it sat with me. A week later, my lawyer called with a strange edge in his voice. "I got a call today from an attorney representing your daughter," he said, "asking about your competency, whether you've had any recent cognitive assessments, whether you've made changes to your estate." My blood went cold. "What did you tell them?" "Nothing, but it tells you where their heads are at. My own children were trying to have me declared incompetent so they could take control of my property while I was still alive to watch it happen." I called my niece. "I need your help with something," I said, "and it's going to sound a little crazy. I need to know what's really going on with the three of them, whether this is greed or something worse." She had a friend from university who did financial investigations, and within days a woman named after nobody in particular sat across my kitchen table telling me, gently, that I might not like what she found. I told her to dig anyway. What she found broke something open in me. My daughter's divorce had gone far worse than she'd ever let on. Her ex's lawyers had found irregularities in her finances during the split, and she'd been forced to settle for almost nothing. Her firm had cut bonuses 2 years running. She'd taken out a second mortgage on her condo just to keep her kids in private school, and was nearly $200,000 in debt. My middle boy's excavation business was on the edge of collapse. Michelle's health scare the year before hadn't been a scare at all. It had been real, stage 2, and the treatment had wiped out every dollar they had. They were 3 payments from losing their house. My youngest's situation was the worst of all. He'd been hospitalized twice, not for exhaustion but for psychiatric emergencies. He was carrying tens of thousands in medical debt he'd told no one about, still teaching every day while barely holding himself together. They weren't just entitled, they were drowning, and every one of them had been too proud or too afraid to say so out loud. I called my daughter first. "I know about the debt," I said. Silence, then a whisper. "How? It doesn't matter how. Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I didn't want you to know I'd failed. You gave me every opportunity and I wrecked it. So instead you decided to try to have me declared incompetent." A long pause. "That wasn't entirely my idea. My lawyer said it was the fastest way to get control before you did something rash." "Something rash like what?" "I don't know, Dad. You've been acting strange since Uncle died, pushing us away. We were worried. You weren't worried about me. You were worried about the money." She started crying, said she was scared, that she was going to lose everything she'd built. I felt for her. It didn't change what she'd tried to do. My middle boy admitted it too, once I laid it out. The foreclosure notice, 60 days and counting. "The cabin's worth $500,000 sitting empty," he said. "We need that money now, not 20 years from now when you're finally—" He stopped himself, but not soon enough. "When I finally die," I said. "That's what you were going to say. Dad, that came out wrong. Did it?" My youngest was the hardest call. When I told him what I knew, his voice went flat. "So you hired someone to spy on us. That's a new low, even for this family." I needed to understand what was really going on. "You want to know what's going on? I've been falling apart for 2 years. I'm on medication that costs $400 a month my insurance won't touch. I've been hospitalized twice because I was a danger to myself, And I couldn't tell you because every time I try to be honest with you, somehow it becomes about your feelings, about how much it hurts you to watch me struggle. I sat in silence, absorbing that. I'm sorry, I said. Are you? Because it feels like you're gathering ammunition. I hired someone because I needed to know if you were coming after what's mine out of greed, or because you were desperate. Now I know you're desperate, all three of you. And instead of helping, you're using it against us. He hung up before I could answer. I sat in my kitchen surrounded by the investigator's file and understood something painful. They were partly right about me, too. I had used money as leverage without ever calling it that. I had made every gift feel like a debt they owed me. That didn't excuse what they'd tried to do. It just made the whole thing sadder. In October, all three cars pulled into my driveway at once. I opened the door before they could knock. My daughter led, dressed sharp as always, eyes hard. My middle boy hung back, uncomfortable. My youngest looked pale and shaky. Each of them was carrying a folder. "We need to talk, Dad," my daughter said. They laid out power of attorney documents on my kitchen table. Drawn up, they said, for my protection. I asked them to be honest about what it actually was. "We want to help manage things," my daughter said. "You want control of my assets while I'm still breathing," I said. My middle boy flinched. "That's not fair. Let's be honest for once in our lives." My daughter's face flushed. "We're drowning, Dad, all three of us, and you're sitting on assets worth over $1 million doing nothing with them. They're my assets." "For now," she snapped, before she could stop herself. Nobody said anything for a long moment. "Get out," I said quietly. "If you don't sign," my daughter said, pulling a second document from her folder, "we're prepared to go to the courts. We have a letter from a doctor stating you're showing early signs of cognitive decline." "What doctor?" "I haven't seen any doctor. A family physician she'd found through a mutual acquaintance, someone who'd reviewed my history secondhand and was willing to put his name on a letter about paranoia and erratic decisions he'd never actually witnessed." "You paid a doctor to lie about my mind," I said. "We're protecting you from yourself. You're trying to steal from me. It's not stealing if it's already going to be ours. It's not yours. None of it. Not the house, not the cabin, not my pension." "It will be," she said coldly, eventually. "We're just trying to make sure it's managed properly until then." I walked to the phone. "You have 30 seconds to leave my property, or I'm calling the police." My daughter stopped at the door on her way out. "You're going to regret this." "I haven't been able to count on any of you for a long time," I said. "This changes nothing." I called my lawyer the moment they'd left. "It's time to tell my niece what's in the will," he said. "She needs to be ready for what's coming." The petition arrived by courier on a Thursday, all three names listed as petitioners, mine as respondent. An application for a finding of incapacity and appointment of a guardian for property and personal care. Even though I'd been warned it was coming, seeing it in print made my hands shake. Every phone call I'd ever made about a furnace or a fallen fence was listed as evidence of decline. My fall in the basement was framed as proof of physical deterioration. My asking them to leave my property was cited as hostile, paranoid behavior toward family. Attached as an exhibit was the letter from the doctor who had never once examined me. My lawyer wasn't rattled. "We have your cognitive assessment. We have your video testimony. I'm going to subpoena that doctor's file. I'd bet money he's never laid eyes on you. He's suggested I have security cameras installed at the house in case anyone tried anything more direct." The technician who came out asked, gently, if I was in some kind of danger. "From my own kids," I said. He didn't ask any more questions. Over the next 2 weeks, my daughter emailed my neighbors, my family doctor, and the school board office where I'd worked for years, all under the guise of concern, asking people to report any troubling behavior. My neighbor across the road called me, confused and a little offended on my behalf, offering to write a letter to my lawyer, saying I was sharper than most people half my age. I got 6 more letters just like it, from people who'd known me 30 years. My middle boy tried a softer approach, showing up unannounced one Saturday, with all 3 kids in tow like nothing had happened. We had a genuinely nice afternoon, until, on his way out, he mentioned quietly that the grandkids missed me, didn't understand why I never came to their games anymore, and maybe if I weren't being so stubborn about the power of attorney, we could put all this behind us. I told him that wasn't fair to the kids or to me. He admitted, finally, that the bank had given them a final 60-day notice. I offered him $50,000, no strings but a proper repayment plan, if he'd drop the petition and apologize. His face lit up, then fell. His sister, he said, would never agree to drop it. She was in too deep, and his brother needed the money for his own debts too badly to walk away. His phone rang before we could finish the conversation. It was the bank. He left without giving me an answer. My youngest came alone on a weekday evening, and the second I opened the door I could see he was in crisis. He sat on my couch, arms wrapped tight around himself, and told me he needed me to just listen, not fix anything. Then he told me the truth, that 4 months earlier he'd taken a bottle of pills, that a neighbor had found him and called the paramedics, that he'd spent 2 days in the ICU, and 2 weeks after that in psychiatric care. I felt the floor drop out from under me. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, he said. I'm telling you because when my sister said we should file the petition, I said yes. Not because I wanted to hurt you, because I don't know how else to survive right now. I asked why he hadn't told me sooner. Because you'd have made it about how you'd failed as a father, he said, and God help me, he was right, and I told him so. He looked almost surprised to hear me admit it. I don't want to fight with you anymore, he said. I'm too tired. I asked him to drop the petition. I can't, he said. My sister's scary when she's like this. Even my brother's afraid of her. I asked if it had really been her idea from the start. Her lawyer's idea, he admitted. But she pushed for it. Convinced us you'd changed, that you weren't thinking straight, that we had to move fast. There it was. My daughter was driving the whole thing. The text came on a Friday in December. We're coming up to the cabin Saturday, all three of us. We need to settle this. 2 o'clock, not a request. I called my lawyer. They're forcing a confrontation at the cabin tomorrow. I'll be there, he said. You don't have to. I was your brother's friend for 30 years. I'm not letting you face this alone. I called my niece next. She insisted on coming too, her daughter in tow. Saturday, the cabin sat under a light dusting of snow, the lake gone still and gray at the edges. My lawyer arrived first, briefcase open, documents laid out neatly on the coffee table, where my wife and I used to play cards on rainy afternoons. My niece arrived with her girl. I knelt down to the 8-year-old's level and told her some grown-ups were going to have a hard conversation, and if it got loud, she and her mom could go upstairs and watch something on a phone. Are you going to fight with my cousin's parents? She asked, with the bluntness only a kid that age can manage. Maybe, I said. Sometimes fighting is how people finally start telling the truth. At 2 o'clock exactly, 3 cars pulled in. My daughter tried her key first, an old one from years back, and it didn't turn. I'd changed the locks. She knocked confused, then harder. When I opened the door and she saw my lawyer sitting there with papers spread across the table, I watched the color drain right out of her face. What is he doing here? He's here because I asked him to be, I said. Come in. We have a lot to discuss. They filed in slowly. My middle boy's kids stayed outside with their mother, or sensing this wasn't a family gathering. My youngest's hands wouldn't stop shaking. If this is some kind of ambush, my daughter started. It's not an ambush, I said. It's the conversation we should have had months ago. Sit down. My lawyer opened a folder. Let's talk about the petition you filed. This is a family matter, my daughter said, not yours. When you take legal action against my client, it becomes exactly my matter. He turned to me. Go ahead. I stood up, my heart pounding harder than I expected. 6 months ago I changed my will, I said. My daughter went white. You did what? I removed all 3 of you as primary beneficiaries. The room went dead silent. My middle boy found his voice first. You cut us out? Not entirely. Each of you will receive $20,000 and one of your mother's belongings. 20,000? My daughter stood, shaking. That's it? The cabin, I continued, is going to your cousin. All 3 of them turned toward the stairs, where my niece had gone up with her daughter. You're giving her the cabin, my youngest said, barely audible. It's my cabin, and yes, she's shown me more care in 6 months than the 3 of you have in years. This is because of the petition, my daughter said. You're punishing us. No, I made this decision before any of you filed anything. I made it because you showed me exactly who you are. We're your children, my middle boy said, voice rising. You're adults who treated me like a bank machine, who couldn't spare 15 minutes when your uncle was dying, who tried to have your own father declared incompetent. That's not fair. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me one of you has called me in the last year just to talk, not to ask for something, just to see how I'm doing. Nobody answered. The rest of the estate, my lawyer said, is being divided among a few charities, the hospital foundation, minor hockey, a scholarship fund at the school board. You're giving our inheritance to strangers, my daughter said, her voice going venomous. I'm giving my money to things that matter to me. We matter to you. Do I matter to you? Because you have a strange way of showing it. And then she said the quiet part loud. That money is ours. We've made plans based on it. Plans based on my death, I said. Yes, she shouted. Yes, based on your death eventually. You've had a good life. When are you going to stop being so selfish? Even she seemed to hear herself say it. Nobody moved. Did you really just say that? My middle boy asked her. Did you just call Dad selfish for not dying on schedule? I felt strangely calm. This is exactly it, I said. This right here. You don't see me as a person. You see me as an obstacle between you and money. I stood up. I know about all of it. Your debt, I said to my daughter. Your foreclosure to my son. Your hospitalizations to my youngest. I know you're desperate, and I am genuinely sorry for that. But I offered to help. $50,000 to your brother. No strings, but repayment. And instead of taking it, the two of you chose to try to steal from me. I didn't think you were serious, my middle boy said quietly. I was completely serious. You were too busy following your sister's lead to hear me. My lawyer stood. Let me be clear about something. This will is airtight. There's a full cognitive assessment, video testimony, and documentation of your attempted coercion, including a fraudulent medical letter. That doctor has already admitted to my office he never examined your father in his life. That's fraud, and it could cost him his license. The room went very quiet. However, I said, and they all looked up, I'm willing to make an offer. What kind of offer? My youngest asked. Drop the petition. All three of you apologize, and we go to family counseling together for a year. Counseling? My daughter said bitterly. You think that fixes this? I think it might help us tell each other the truth for the first time in decades. And if you agree, I'll help each of you financially. Right now, no strings beyond honesty. I nodded to my lawyer, who slid 3 envelopes across the table. Your sister, $60,000 toward the debt. Your brother, $60,000 to stop the foreclosure. You, to my youngest, $80,000 for treatment, plus your medication and therapy, covered for the next 5 years. My middle boy did the math out loud, stunned. That's almost $200,000. The will stays the same, I said. The cabin still goes to your cousin, but you'll have what you need right now. And maybe we build something real again. My middle boy started crying. Dad, I don't know what to say. Say you'll actually try. He nodded. My youngest was openly sobbing. You'd really pay for all of it? If you actually go, if you take it seriously. I will. I promise I will. Every eye turned to my daughter, arms crossed, jaw tight. This is manipulation, she said finally. How is offering help manipulation? You're buying our compliance. I'm asking you to actually try to fix what's broken. What's broken, she snapped, is that you cut us out for a woman who isn't even your daughter. She pointed toward the stairs. She shows up at the end and gets handed $500,000 in property. She didn't show up at the end, I said. She was there the whole time you weren't. Because I was working, building a life, and now you're punishing me for it. I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself. She laughed, sharp and humorless. You want the truth, Dad? I hate that cabin. I always have. It was boring. There was nothing to do, and I pretended to love it because it was what you and Mom wanted. The words landed like a slap. You hated it. Yes, and I bet he did too. She nodded at her brother, who wouldn't meet my eyes. Is that true? I asked him. I didn't hate it, he said quietly. But it was more your dream than ours. I sat down heavily, 41 years of memories rearranging themselves in my chest. So this is what you really think of me, that I forced you to perform happiness. Not forced, my youngest said. But you had this picture of the perfect family, and we all tried so hard to be it, and it was never quite enough. I never said you weren't enough. You didn't have to say it. Every time we disappointed you, you'd get this look, this wounded look, and we'd feel guilty for just being human. My lawyer touched my shoulder gently. Maybe we take a break. No, I said, standing again. No, this is good. This is honest, finally. I looked at my 3 children, really looked at them. You're right, some of it, I said. I did build a picture of a perfect family and expect you to fit it. I did use guilt without ever calling it that. I made my love feel conditional. I'm sorry. I mean that. They looked stunned. But, I continued, that doesn't excuse the resentment, the entitlement, the cruelty. At some point, you have to take responsibility for your own choices, too. So where does that leave us? My middle boy asked. It leaves you with a choice, I said, nodding at the envelopes. Take the help and do the work, or walk away and keep the $20,000 from the will. You can't have both. You can't take my money and keep treating me like garbage. My daughter stared at the envelope with her name on it for a long time. What happens if we take it and don't follow through on the counseling? Then my lawyer files to recover the funds for fraud. You'd sue us. I'd protect myself, same as you tried to do to me. She picked up the envelope, opened it, stared at the check inside. This is real. It's real. She looked at me for a long moment. You'd still give me this after everything? You're still my daughter. I still love you. Her face crumpled, and for 1 second I saw the little girl who used to fall asleep on my chest during Leafs games underneath all that armor. I'm sorry, she whispered. I don't even know who I turned into this year. I opened my arms, and she came into them, crying harder than I'd heard her cry since she was small. My middle boy joined, then my youngest, and the four of us stood in the middle of that cabin, holding on to each other, while the snow kept falling outside. My lawyer quietly stepped out onto the porch to give us the room. When we finally pulled apart, my niece came down the stairs with her daughter. Is everything okay? She asked carefully. It's going to be, I said. We sat at that same table for hours afterward, talking properly for the first time in years. My daughter admitted she'd been jealous of how easy things seemed between me and my niece. No history, no baggage. It wasn't easy, my niece said quietly. I was terrified you'd all resent me for being close to your dad. We did, my daughter admitted. That was never your fault, though. That one's on us. My middle boy talked about the weight of feeling like he had to be the man after my wife died, even though he was barely out of his teens himself. My youngest finally talked, really talked, about how long the depression had been building, how afraid he'd always been of being one more problem for me to carry. We talked about money, about the patterns we'd built together without ever naming them. My daughter said, unprompted, that the cabin should stay with her cousin. Not because they didn't want it, but because it had genuinely never been about the cabin, only ever the money, and that wasn't fair to admit before now. She asked if she could still visit sometimes, not to claim it, just to make some real memories there. My niece told her she'd love that. We agreed to start family counseling in January with someone my lawyer recommended in Peterborough. My middle boy insisted on treating the $60,000 as a real loan, interest and all, even after I told him not to bother. My youngest, harder to convince than either of them, asked what happened if the treatment didn't work. Then we keep trying, I told him. You deserve to get well, not for me, for yourself. By the time everyone left that night, it was full dark outside, the lake frozen solid under a sky full of stars. It wasn't clean. It wasn't the ending you get in a movie, but it was honest, and honest was more than we'd had in a very long time. Counseling was brutal, most weeks. My daughter walked out of 2 sessions in the first 2 months. My middle boy cried through nearly every one. My youngest had a panic attack in session 4 that scared all of us half to death. But we kept showing up, week after week, admitting the parts we'd each played. My using money as a leash without ever naming it, that they're treating me as a resource instead of a person. All of us performing a family we thought we were supposed to be instead of the one we actually had. A year after I first changed my will, we had dinner at the cabin again, not because anyone made us, but because we wanted to. My daughter brought wine and stories about a new job with better hours and less money, and about a widower she'd started seeing from her building. My middle boy showed me pictures of the roof repairs the loan had covered. Michelle's cancer still in remission, the kids thriving. My youngest looked healthier than I'd seen him in years, on medication that was finally working, teaching again, even dating a little. My niece and her daughter were there too, because by then nobody thought to question it. They were simply family. Sitting on the dock afterward while the others cleaned up inside, my niece asked if I was ever going to change the will back. I don't know, I told her. Maybe someday. Maybe I'll adjust it, give them a bit more, keep most of it where it's going. Was it ever really about the money? She asked. No, I said. It was about self-respect, about teaching them, finally, that love isn't supposed to come with a price tag. Did it work? Through the window I could see my daughter drying dishes while my middle boy washed, the two of them laughing about something from when they were kids. My youngest sat at the table helping my great niece with a puzzle, patient as anything. They're learning, I said. We all are. I'm 70 years old now. I still live in the same bungalow, though I finally fixed that leaky basement. The cabin belongs to my niece outright. The deed transferred 2 winters ago, but it's become something bigger than any one of us. She runs it as a small writing retreat in the summers, and the rest of the year it's just ours again, all of us, holidays and long weekends and the odd random Sunday for no reason at all. My daughter calls me every week now, sometimes about something important, mostly about nothing at all, which is somehow the part that matters most. My middle boy's business is steady again. He paid back the loan in full, with interest, over my objections. My youngest had one hard winter last year, a real setback, but this time he picked up the phone and let me help him through it, and that meant more to me than anything else in this whole story. Last summer we had everyone up to the cabin at once. All three of my kids, their families, my niece and her girl. 19 people crowded into a place my wife and I built with our own two hands 42 years ago. We took a photograph out on the dock at sunset, all of us squeezed together the way we used to be. When I look at that picture now, I see something I never saw in any of the old ones. I see people who actually chose to be there, not performing it, choosing it. It isn't the family I set out to raise. It's messier than that, and it still costs us something, most weeks. But we show up now. We apologize. We keep trying. And after everything, I've come to believe that's what love actually looks like. Not the tidy picture I used to carry around in my head, but something real and stubborn and worth every bit of the fight it took to get here.